Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we are going to be tackling something that we all use every single day, but probably could all stand to get a little bit better at, and that's communication.
Ooh, I like this one.
Yeah, we've got some really insightful sources here, ready to unpack what makes for truly impactful and meaningful interactions.
Right.
So much of our lives, like personal relationships, our work lives, even just navigating the world, depends on being able to communicate effectively. And I know I'm definitely guilty of sometimes just completely missing the mark. Like, why do messages get lost, even when we think we're being clear?
Yeah.
How can we avoid those frustrating communication breakdowns? You know, those times where you just feel like banging your head against the wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there some kind of secret sauce to making our conversations more impactful and just more meaningful?
Oh, I think there is. What's so fascinating to me is that communication is often treated as if it's so simple, but it's a surprisingly complex art form. It's not just about the words themselves, but it's the whole intricate dance of signals that we send and receive.
I love that, the intricate dance. The sources definitely emphasize that.
Yeah.
One of the first things that jumps out is this emphasis on active listening.
Yeah.
Now, I know this might sound basic, but I'm definitely guilty of, sometimes just sort of waiting for my turn to speak
Right.
rather than truly absorbing what the other person is saying.
Right, I know exactly what you mean. And think about a time when you were talking to someone and you could tell their mind was miles away.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they were glued to their phone, or you could practically see them rehearsing their reply in their head.
Oh, yeah.
That feeling of being unheard can be pretty deflating.
It's the worst. It makes you feel like you don't matter in that conversation. And one source even compared it to someone pouring their heart out while the other person's just totally checked out.
Oof, yeah, that's a tough one. And that lack of genuine connection can really chip away at relationships.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Whether it's with friends, family, or colleagues, it leaves people feeling disrespected and undervalued.
Yeah, and then, it kind of builds up over time.
Mm,
And suddenly you're like, wait a minute, how did we even get here?
exactly. And so active listening, it goes beyond just hearing the words. It's about tuning into the emotions, the body language, the subtext beneath the surface.
Right.
It's about truly understanding where the other person is coming from.
So it's not just what they're saying, but how they're saying it.
Precisely. It's about empathy, stepping into their shoes and trying to see the world through their lens.
I love that, stepping into their shoes.
And it's interesting. Neuroscience has actually identified mirror neurons in our brains
Oh, okay.
that fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else doing it.
Really?
These neurons help us understand others' feelings, and consciously activating them can supercharge our communication.
Wow, I had no idea about those mirror neurons. So by actively trying to understand someone's perspective, we're actually triggering a physical response in our brains that helps us connect with them on a deeper level.
Exactly, and when someone feels genuinely heard, it creates a foundation of trust and strengthens the connection between you.
That makes so much sense. Okay, so active listening is key.
Yeah.
But what about making sure our own message gets across clearly? The sources talk a lot about clarity in communication, and I know I've been in situations where I've just used way too many words, hoping that the message would somehow magically make sense.
Right, and that often backfires.
Yeah.
The sources actually introduce a concept called the curse of knowledge,
Ooh, curves of knowledge.
where experts often assume their audience knows more than they do.
Right.
We get so caught up in our own understanding that we forget to explain things clearly for someone who's coming at it fresh.
Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I've definitely been on both sides of that equation. So how do we avoid falling into that trap?
One key is to be mindful of our audience. Who are we talking to? What's their level of understanding? What jargon or buzzwords might we need to explain or avoid altogether?
But one source had a great contrast between, those long rambling speeches
Yeah.
and short, impactful messages. Sometimes less is definitely more.
Absolutely. Brevity is a superpower.
Like that.
Being concise, direct, and intentional with our word choice can make a huge difference in how our message lands.
I love that too.
Think about some of the most effective communicators you've encountered.
Okay.
They're often masters of distilling complex ideas into simple, understandable terms.
That's so true. I think about some of the best TED Talks I've seen.
Yes.
They take these really complex ideas and make them accessible and engaging for a broad audience.
Exactly, and that's a skill we can all cultivate. It takes practice. But by being mindful of our word choice and aiming for clarity, we can drastically improve how effectively we communicate.
So true. The sources also delve into the often overlooked world of nonverbal communication.
Ah, yes. Body language, facial expressions, even silence. They can
Yeah.
speak volumes.
You really can. It's amazing how our nonverbal cues can sometimes completely contradict the words coming out of our mouths.
Oh, absolutely. One source gave a perfect example. Imagine someone saying, "I'm fine," but with their arms crossed and a frown on their face.
Oh, yeah.
You instantly sense the disconnect.
Yeah, total disconnect. Have you ever been in a situation where you noticed that kind of mismatch between words and nonverbal signals?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, me too. I remember this time when a friend was going through a breakup,
Oh,
and they kept saying they were okay, but their body language,
yeah.
slumped shoulders, avoiding eye contact, told a completely different story.
It's like a secret language we all speak, and getting better at reading those subtle cues can significantly enhance our understanding of others.
Yeah.
Did you know there's a whole field of study dedicated to microexpressions?
What?
These are fleeting facial expressions that can reveal hidden emotions. For example, a slight lip twitch might indicate contempt, while a furrowed brow could signal confusion.
No way. I had no idea. There's a whole science behind these microexpressions. That's fascinating.
It's like having a superpower, being able to decode people's true feelings even when they're trying to hide them.
Okay, I love that. So it's about becoming more attuned to those nonverbal nuances, which can often tell us more than words ever could.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got active listening, clarity, and nonverbal communication, all incredibly important elements of effective communication.
Yeah.
But there's one more key ingredient that the sources highlight:
Okay. I'm intrigued. What's the secret sauce?
empathy.
Ooh, tell me more.
The sources describe empathy as the key to connecting on a truly human level.
I love that.
It's about going beyond just transmitting information
Yeah.
and making the other person feel seen, heard, and understood.
It's about acknowledging their experience as valid, even if it's totally different from our own.
One source shared a powerful anecdote about these heated discussions,
Okay.
where one person feels completely unheard.
Yeah.
And they contrasted that with a feeling of respect that comes when someone responds with empathy, even if they don't agree with everything you're saying.
Right. It's about showing that you care about the other person's perspective, even if you don't necessarily share it. It's about offering support and making them feel valued. I actually remember a time when I was struggling with a decision at work, and I was talking to a colleague, and even though they didn't offer any concrete solutions,
Yeah.
just them saying, "I understand how difficult this must be for you," made me feel so much better.
That's a great example. And it's often those small gestures, like simply acknowledging someone's feelings, that can make all the difference. Like when someone tries to understand my point of view, it totally shifts the dynamic of the conversation.
It creates space for open and honest dialogue, even when dealing with tricky topics. Think about a time when you felt truly heard and understood in a conversation.
Yeah.
What made that interaction so meaningful?
You know, it's funny, the times that stand out are often not the big dramatic conversations,
Okay.
but the smaller moments where someone just really gets you. Like they see beyond the words to the emotions and thoughts underneath.
Exactly. It's about validating the other person's experience, even if you don't have a solution or see eye to eye.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Active listening, clarity, nonverbal communication, and the power of empathy.
It's like we're starting to build a toolkit for more meaningful interactions.
I love that, a toolkit, but how do we actually put all these principles into practice? Like, it feels like we've leveled up our understanding, but now we need to figure out how to apply it in the real world.
Well, stay tuned because in part 2, we're going to dive into some practical tips and strategies from the sources on how to make these communication skills a part of our everyday lives.
Ooh, this is getting good. I can't wait to see what else we uncover.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the art of communication.
We left off talking about that incredible CEO and how his communication skills played a key role in his company's success.
It's a perfect example of how mastering communication can lead to, tangible real-world results.
Yeah.
It's not just some abstract concept. It's a powerful tool for achieving goals.
Exactly. It makes you wonder how we can create that kind of positive communication environment in our own lives, at work, at home, or even in our communities.
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
Luckily, the sources offer some valuable insights. They talk about being present in conversations, putting aside distractions, and truly focusing on the person in front of you.
So ditching the phone
Yes.
and giving someone our undivided attention.
Precisely. It's about asking questions, seeking clarification, and showing genuine interest in what the other person has to say. The sources actually use a really interesting phrase.
Okay.
Generous listening.
Generous listening. I love that.
It's about going beyond just hearing the words and really trying to understand the deeper meaning and emotions behind them.
It implies a sense of giving something to the other person through our attention and understanding.
It's about creating a space where people feel safe to express themselves without fear of judgment.
Yeah.
The sources also emphasize the importance of being mindful of our own communication style. It's easy to get caught up in our own thoughts and forget to consider how our words and actions are impacting others.
That's something I'm definitely working on. It's so easy to slip into autopilot and not think about how we're coming across.
Absolutely. It's about taking a step back and asking ourselves, am I being clear? Am I being respectful? Am I actively listening?
Right.
We should strive to improve our communication skills and be more aware of how we show up in our interactions.
You know, I'm noticing a recurring theme here. It seems like effective communication is deeply intertwined with the art of connection.
Absolutely. At its core, communication is all about building bridges between people, fostering understanding, sharing experiences, and creating meaningful relationships.
Yeah, it goes far beyond just the words themselves. It's about our intentions, our body language, our willingness to truly listen and connect on a deeper level.
Right.
It reminds me of that quote, the most important thing in communication is to hear what isn't being said.
Exactly. Pay attention to those subtle cues, the unspoken emotions and underlying messages that often get lost in translation.
Yeah, it's like we need to become communication detectives.
And that's where empathy becomes such a crucial skill. It allows us to step into the other person's shoes and see the world from their perspective, even if it differs from our own.
It's about recognizing that everyone has unique experiences and perspectives that shape their worldview. And when we approach communication with that understanding, we open ourselves up to new levels of connection. It's like learning a new language, the language of human connection.
The more we practice, the more fluent we become in expressing ourselves authentically and building meaningful relationships with others.
So true. One source even went so far as to say that mastering communication is the key to unlocking human potential.
I love that idea.
It's empowering to think that effective communication can help us all achieve great things.
When we communicate effectively, we break down barriers, build bridges, and create a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued.
Now that's a world I want to live in.
Yeah.
So what practical steps can we take to achieve that?
Stay tuned, because in Part 3, we'll uncover the actionable strategies from our sources that can help us all become better communicators.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the art of communication.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? Exploring all these nuances of human interaction and the power of connection.
It really has. We've covered so much ground, from active listening and empathy to clarity and those fascinating micro-expressions.
Right. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about how to put all this amazing knowledge into practice.
Yeah, because what good is all this information if we don't actually use it to become better communicators?
Exactly. One source had this really practical suggestion. Start by paying attention to how people communicate around you.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like becoming a student of communication, observing interactions, taking note of what works and what doesn't.
So, like, watch those master communicators, the ones who just seem to effortlessly connect with others.
Exactly. What are their secrets? What specific techniques do they use?
And on the flip side, pay attention to those communication breakdowns.
Oh, yeah. Those cringeworthy moments.
What went wrong? How could things have been handled differently?
It's like conducting your own research study on effective communication, but gathering data from the real world.
And the best part is, you don't need any fancy equipment or a lab coat.
Nope, just your own powers of observation. Another source suggested keeping a communication journal.
A communication journal. I've never heard of that. What would that even look like?
It could be as simple as, jotting down a few notes after a particularly impactful conversation.
Okay, so, like, what went well, what could have been better, and maybe what did you learn about yourself or the other person?
Exactly. It's a way to reflect on your experiences and identify patterns in your own behavior. Those aha moments.
I love that idea. It's like having a personal communication coach right there in your notebook.
And speaking of coaching, the sources also emphasize the importance of seeking feedback from others.
Ooh, that could be a little scary though, right? Asking people to critique our communication style.
It can be vulnerable, for sure, but it's incredibly valuable.
Right.
We all have blind spots when it comes to communication. Sometimes we don't realize how certain habits or behaviors are impacting others.
Totally.
Asking for feedback from friends, family, colleagues we trust can provide invaluable insights into how we're perceived.
And it's not just about identifying areas for improvement either. It's also about celebrating our strengths.
Yeah, absolutely. What are we already doing well? What are our natural communication
Yeah,
talents?
what are those things that make us really good communicators?
Recognize those strengths and then leverage them to become even more effective. The sources also highlighted the importance of practice. Just like any skill, communication takes practice to master.
That makes sense.
And it doesn't have to be anything formal or intimidating. Just make a conscious effort to be more present in your everyday conversations.
So those little interactions like ordering coffee or chatting with a coworker.
Exactly. Challenge yourself to actively listen, speak with clarity, and express empathy.
And the more you practice, the more natural these skills become.
It's like working on a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. So it seems like this journey to becoming a better communicator is an ongoing process.
It is. That's one of the key takeaways from our sources, isn't it?
Yeah.
Effective communication is a journey, not a destination.
It's about constantly striving to improve, learn from our experiences, and become more authentic and compassionate in our interactions with others.
Beautifully said. Well, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
It really has been a fascinating exploration.
I feel like I've learned so much, and I hope our listeners have too.
Me too. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. May your conversations be filled with understanding, connection, and the power of human connection.